The moment the bass dropped hard enough to rattle the photos off my living room wall, I thought we were under attack. I leapt off my couch, halfway reaching for my sidearm, only to realize the enemy wasn't foreign or domestic, it was local. And entitled. Through the window, I saw a red carpet rolled across my driveway, a dozen folding chairs lined up like it was the Oscars, and some woman in high heels barking orders at a man trying to set up a cotton candy machine. It was 9 in the morning. I was supposed to be on leave. I hadn't even had my coffee. I stepped outside, still in joggers and a worn t-shirt, expecting maybe a neighborhood block party mix-up. What I didn't expect was to be immediately accosted by a woman with aggressively layered blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a sash that actually said "Hostess" in glittery gold letters. She looked at me like I'd just tracked mud into Buckingham Palace. "Excuse me," she screeched, motioning to my truck like it was some kind of rotting carcass. "You can't park that there. You're blocking the entrance." I blinked. "The entrance to what?" "My charity event," she said like I was an idiot. "We're hosting a red carpet gala for local influencers. Guests will be arriving in an hour. That truck ruins the aesthetic." I turned, very slowly, to look at my truck. It was parked right in front of my garage, on my gravel driveway, attached to my house, which I had purchased 3 years ago with no HOA, no shared lots, and no obligations to cater to anyone's aesthetic. I turned back to her. "This is my driveway," I said calmly. "You're on my property." She waved dismissively. "We cleared it with the HOA. It's communal." I blinked again. "There is no HOA." She sniffed. "Well, someone said we could use it." "And who was that?" She hesitated. "Derek." "Who's Derek?" She paused again. "My event planner's cousin. He said he knew the area." I almost laughed. This woman had essentially taken over my front yard based on the verbal approval of a guy named Derek, who may or may not exist, and was now demanding I move my truck to accommodate her fake Oscars. At that moment, a crew started unloading giant speakers from a rented van, right onto the lawn next to my hydrangeas. I stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to move this event off my property immediately." "You're being very aggressive right now," she said, stepping back like I'd just pulled a sword on her. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I stared at her. "Leave my own driveway?" "Yes," she snapped. "This is a professional event. You're making people uncomfortable." I hadn't seen anyone else yet, aside from the caterer and the guy sweating bullets trying to hook up the margarita machine. Still, she whipped out her phone and dialed with theatrical speed. "Yes, hello, I'd like to report a man threatening me and refusing to leave during a permitted charity event." I chuckled. I actually chuckled. "You called the police?" She looked at me smugly. "Yes. You'll be gone in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up, lights flashing. The first officer out of the car was a young guy named Rojas, fresh on the force but someone I'd worked with before. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened like a kid caught skipping class. "Trooper Marshall," he said, half bowing. "Sir, what's going on?" I motioned around. "Karen here." I hadn't caught her real name, but it felt right, decided to host an unauthorized red carpet gala in my driveway. Karen stepped forward, inserting herself between us. "Officer, he's being difficult and aggressive. This is supposed to be a peaceful event." Rojas looked at her, then back at me, confused. "This is your property, right?" "Yes," I said. "And she's trespassing." Karen's mouth fell open. "You're a cop." "I'm a state trooper," I said. "And a homeowner. 2 things you should have figured out before calling 911. She sputtered. Well, you're abusing your power. I'm going to call your boss. You can't intimidate people just because you have a badge." I pulled out my phone. "Here. Want me to call him for you?" "He's probably free." Rojas tried not to laugh. The second officer, an older guy who'd clearly seen some things, walked up behind him. "Ma'am, do you have any permits for this event?" Karen crossed her arms. It's a private charity event. I don't need permits. It's for a good cause. What's the charity? I asked. It's a foundation. For emerging influencers. Rojas raised an eyebrow. That's not a charity. Karen turned crimson. You're all just trying to ruin this because you're jealous. This was supposed to be my big comeback. Comeback from what? I asked. She didn't answer. Just huffed, stormed off toward the caterer, and began yelling something about the patriarchy. I looked at the officers. Well, I said. Looks like I'm hosting a party. They laughed. One of them radioed it in as a civil misunderstanding, but Rojas offered to hang around for a bit, just in case she got any more creative. I thanked him and went inside to finally get my coffee, wondering just how far Karen was going to take this. 10 minutes later, she was back, standing in front of my garage with a man in a suit, holding a clipboard and looking confused. I found someone from the city, she shouted. He's here to shut you down. The man waved nervously. Actually, ma'am, I just do building inspections. I sipped my coffee from the porch. This is going to be fun. And somehow I knew we were just getting started. I woke up the next morning thinking maybe, just maybe, Karen had come to her senses overnight. That maybe the impromptu red carpet, the ridiculous tent, the DJ booth, and the mysterious margarita machine would all be gone, along with the glitter-laden fever dream of her charity gala. But when I stepped outside, I was greeted not by peace and quiet, but by the blaring sound of a leaf blower being used indoors and a woman screeching about tablecloth alignment. Karen was still here. In fact, it looked like she had doubled down. Overnight, she had added balloon arches, 2 more folding tables, and, unbelievably, a rented inflatable swan pool float sitting in the middle of my driveway for absolutely no reason. My driveway was now a fully operational, wildly illegal event space. I stood at the edge of my porch, sipping my coffee like a man watching a storm roll in, except the storm wore designer heels and was currently berating a teenage volunteer for not fluffing the swag bags correctly. Something in me snapped. I put down the coffee, walked back inside, and opened the manila folder where I kept all my property records, survey maps, and every receipt since I bought the place. Then I opened another drawer and pulled out my camera system monitor. The motion detection logs from yesterday were glowing like Christmas lights. Every step Karen had taken, every time she stomped across the gravel, every time she screamed at someone or tripped over a power cord, it was all on camera. I decided to start with the city. I called my buddy Nate at the County Code Enforcement Office, a guy who owed me a favor or two. Nate picked up groggily, but perked up the moment I mentioned unauthorized red carpet gala. You're joking, he said. I wish I was, I replied. Do you have any records of a permit for a charity event out here? After a few minutes of searching, Nate confirmed what I already suspected. There was no event filed, no permit requested, and certainly nothing in the system with Karen's name or the fake-sounding foundation she kept spouting about. Want me to come by? He asked. Bring your clipboard, I said. 30 minutes later, Nate rolled up in his county-marked car and stepped out looking half official, half curious, like a man who had walked into a circus without buying a ticket. Karen spotted him immediately and swooped in like a hawk. Finally, she said, grabbing Nate's arm. I've been trying to reach someone to deal with this aggressive man threatening my event. Are you code enforcement? Nate smiled politely. Yes, ma'am. I'm here to inspect the validity of the event setup. Can I see your permit documents? She laughed. Not nervously, not politely, but with a forced confidence that reminded me of people who try to bluff their way through airport security. Of course, she said. Let me get them. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled stack of papers that looked like they had been printed at a gas station 5 minutes ago. Nate took them, examined the headers, and his eyebrows immediately furrowed. These don't match our forms, he said. They're copies, she replied quickly. I had to adjust the layout to fit the flyer format. You edited a legal permit form to fit your flyer? It's a graphic design thing, she snapped. Nate gave me a quick glance. That was all I needed. I stepped forward. Karen, can you explain why your permit has the city logo in the wrong font and lists the event supervisor as Derek W.? Is that the same Derek who approved using my property? She looked like she'd just swallowed a pinecone. I'm not required to answer anything without legal representation. Great, Nate said. Because forging or modifying an official document is a violation of city code. We're going to have to shut this down. Karen's voice went up an octave. You can't shut it down. Guests are already arriving. I have a VIP list. I looked down the road and saw 2 sedans and a very confused man in a tuxedo standing by a folding sign that read, "Influencer entrance this way." A group of 3 girls in matching yoga sets was taking selfies in front of my truck, which they apparently thought was part of the aesthetic. Karen's eyes darted around wildly, as if trying to physically will her event back into legitimacy. Then she spotted something and her whole demeanor shifted. Look, she said, grabbing Nate's arm again and pointing toward the side of my house. See that power box? We're plugged into that outlet. Doesn't that make it communal? If the power's accessible, it's shared, right? Nate blinked at her. You're using his power? I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't even noticed the extension cord before, running from the side outlet I usually used for Christmas lights all the way across the driveway to the blender at the Margarita station. You've been stealing my electricity? I asked. Karen was undeterred. It's just for the event. You can claim it on taxes. It's basically deductible. Nate and I stared at her, both of us briefly rendered speechless. She had just admitted to unauthorized use of my utilities on camera, with a county officer as a witness, and she thought I'd thank her for the deduction? Karen turned and stormed off again, this time barking into her phone. I need you here now, she said. Tell everyone to post. Tag the location. We're being harassed. I sighed. She's about to go viral, isn't she? Oh, definitely, Nate said. But not the way she thinks. We walked back toward my porch while a small commotion started at the entrance. A group of guests was being told they had to turn around. A guy in a velvet jacket was yelling about refunds. Karen returned 5 minutes later with a new plan and a desperate look in her eyes. I've spoken to my legal team, she said. They're on their way. This event is protected under freedom of expression. It's not a protest, I said. It's an artistic gathering, she argued. And you're infringing on my rights. You're on my land. Temporarily. Nate made a note on his clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and log this as trespassing, unauthorized utility access, and false documentation. We'll be following up. Karen looked like she might cry. Then she spun on her heel and shouted, Nobody panic. Everything's under control. Someone yelled back, The DJ left. That was the final nail in the coffin. Her face cracked for a moment before she plastered on another smile. But I knew something else was coming. Because Karen didn't seem like the type to go down quietly. She seemed like the type to make one last desperate move before the whole thing burned to the ground. By noon, Karen's gala was teetering on the edge of a full-blown meltdown. The DJ had bailed, the power had been cut. By me, legally, from the breaker box she never had permission to tap into, and the only people left wandering around the driveway were confused guests holding overpriced tickets and half-inflated helium balloons. The red carpet, now sagging in the middle and dusty from being dragged over gravel, was littered with paper programs that boasted things like Live Celebrity Panel and exclusive gift bags for the first 50 guests. There were maybe 10 people in total, and one of them was a toddler playing with a plastic martini glass. And through all of it, Karen stormed around like she still had an empire to manage, shouting half-baked orders to people who weren't listening and blaming everything but herself. Her aura screamed frantic denial, and it was about to get worse. At exactly 12:15, a sheriff's department SUV pulled up to the end of the driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that immediately killed whatever remained of Karen's ambience. The man who stepped out wore aviators, a serious face, and a badge that told me this wasn't just a social visit. Sheriff Langston wasn't one for small talk. He walked straight up to me with a nod and then turned toward the circus that had hijacked my property. "You Jordan?" he asked. "Yep. Thanks for coming." He squinted toward the chaos. "You weren't kidding." Karen spotted him instantly and, before he could say a word, charged at him like a reality show contestant mid-drama. "Finally," she announced, arms spread wide. "Someone with actual authority. I need you to remove this man. He's been threatening my guests and shutting down a city-sanctioned charity event. It's discrimination. It's harassment. And frankly, it's un-American." Langston raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, I'm here to serve a cease and desist. And you're the one receiving it." Karen froze. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a confused goldfish. "Excuse me. You've been reported for trespassing, utility theft, and organizing a public event without permit. This is your official notice to vacate the premises and cease all activities immediately." She laughed, but it was the kind of laugh you hear from someone unraveling. "That's not possible. This is my event. This is a community celebration. I have guests. We have a hashtag." Langston handed her a packet of papers. "Then you can hashtag these. You have 15 minutes to begin dismantling everything before it becomes a criminal matter." Karen's face twisted, her facade cracking right there under the midday sun. She looked around at the scattered guests, the wilting balloon arch, the sad folding table where 2 lukewarm chafing dishes sat untouched. She turned back to the sheriff with something that was almost a snarl. "You can't do this," she hissed. "You don't know who I am." "I don't," he replied flatly, "and I don't need to." "I have friends in the mayor's office," she snapped. Langston didn't blink. "Then they can explain city ordinances to you when they visit you in holding." Karen stormed away again, dialing someone on her phone so aggressively she nearly flung it. I overheard bits of her panicked whispering, things like, "No, it's not my house, I thought it was fine," and "What do you mean Derek left town?" That name again. Derek. The imaginary wizard of permits and power access, who apparently existed only in Karen's unraveling narrative. It was almost sad. Almost. As the sheriff's deputy began snapping photos of the event setup for documentation, a few of the guests started confronting Karen. One woman in oversized sunglasses and a tight dress jabbed a finger at Karen's face. "You told me there'd be photographers here," she snapped. "I paid $200 for exposure." A man behind her added, "And where's the open bar you promised?" Karen tried to salvage her performance. "There was a minor technical issue. Everything's being rescheduled. You'll all get exclusive VIP access to the next event." "You mean in jail?" someone quipped, and laughter rippled through the dwindling crowd. Then came the final blow. A county investigator pulled up, not in uniform but wearing a badge clipped to his belt and a no-nonsense expression. He approached me directly. "You Jordan Marshall?" "Yes." "You filed the complaint?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. "Mind if we step aside for a second?" I led him toward my porch, and he dropped the bomb. "We've been looking into this woman for a few months. Someone using multiple aliases to set up bogus charity events, collecting ticket fees, then disappearing before the refund requests come in. Looks like she finally stayed in one place too long." My eyebrows lifted. "She's been running a scam?" "Across 3 counties. All under different business names. She never files with the IRS, never submits paperwork to the state. We've been trying to catch her in the act." "Well," I said, glancing at the chaos unfolding across my property, "you're welcome." Back on the driveway, Karen was still arguing, though now her voice was shriller and cracking. The sheriff had called in a tow truck to remove the margarita machine van and the DJ's rental trailer, both of which had been illegally parked on the easement next to my fence. Karen's final Hail Mary was to claim emotional trauma. "I've been under so much stress," she wailed. "You don't understand what I've been through. This event was my last chance to rebuild my brand. Langston remained unmoved. Then maybe you should have built it somewhere legal. As the guests cleared out, many shaking their heads or filming on their phones, the news crew showed up. Apparently, someone had tipped off the local station that a rogue gala had been shut down by law enforcement on private property. A cameraman and a reporter stood at the edge of the road, capturing footage as the inflatable swan was deflated like the ego that brought it here. One last time, Karen turned toward me, mascara smudged, dress dusty, and rage blazing in her eyes. "You ruined everything," she growled. I leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. "You did that all by yourself." She didn't reply. Just climbed into a rented SUV, slammed the door, and sped off so fast she kicked up gravel into the remaining snack table. Langston looked at me. "You want to press charges?" I nodded. "Every single one available." He smirked. "You got it. Oh, and you might want to check your mail next week. This whole thing might have made the local paper." I grinned. "As long as the headline says, 'Karen arrested on my driveway,' I'm good." The last folding chair was loaded into the back of the tow truck. The red carpet, now crumpled and stained, was tossed unceremoniously into a garbage bag. It was over, for now. But something told me Karen wasn't done causing chaos. And I wasn't done being ready for her. The next morning, I stood at the end of my freshly reclaimed driveway with a cup of coffee in one hand and a trash bag full of event flyers in the other. The only trace left of Karen's fraudulent gala was the faint imprint of a red carpet that had flattened the gravel and the lone glitter balloon caught in my fence. For the first time in 2 days, my property was silent, peaceful, mine again. But I knew better than to assume it was truly over. Karen wasn't the kind of person to quietly disappear after being publicly embarrassed and legally dismantled. No, Karen was the kind who saw herself as the victim of a conspiracy, some grand injustice dealt to her by people too small-minded to understand her vision. So I wasn't surprised when I got a call that afternoon from the county clerk's office asking me to confirm my identity because someone had filed a complaint against me. That someone? Karen. And her accusation? Harassment, obstruction, and emotional damage caused by an unlawful abuse of police authority during a peaceful charity gathering. I nearly choked on my water. Karen was trying to turn the tables, again. But what she didn't realize, what she never seemed to realize, was that I hadn't just let her walk into a trap. I'd built it brick by brick with legal reinforcement. Everything she did, from stepping on my property to plugging into my power box to forging city documents, was documented, time-stamped, and witnessed. I had more angles on her behavior than a Hollywood film shoot, and I hadn't even released all the footage yet. Still, I went to the station just to make it formal. I sat with the investigator and calmly laid out the timeline, showing camera footage, phone logs, emails from the county office, and even screen grabs from Karen's own social media accounts where she posted photos of herself with the caption, "Queen of the Gala," no matter what haters say. By the time I was done, the investigator looked more entertained than concerned. "Well," he said, pushing the paperwork back toward me, "this is one of the most thorough self-incriminations I've ever seen." She submitted a complaint and attached a flyer as evidence. The same flyer that uses a fake city logo and a made-up permit code. I raised an eyebrow. "So she submitted forged evidence in an official complaint?" He nodded. "Yup. Which means we're filing a counterclaim for filing a false report and submitting fraudulent documents." Karen was trying to weaponize the system, but she didn't understand how the system worked. I'd spent years working with district attorneys, case processors, and code enforcement officers. I knew the playbook, and now I was playing it better than she could dream. I left the station that day with a copy of the complaint and a grin that stretched across my whole face. But I didn't go straight home. I had one more stop to make. I drove to the old neighborhood association office on the other side of town, where Karen used to live before she mysteriously vanished and reappeared in mine. Her former HOA president, a no-nonsense woman named Cheryl, had reached out to me on social media after seeing the video clips from my driveway that had made their way to local news and, apparently, a Reddit thread titled Karen's Red Carpet Catastrophe. Cheryl met me with a folder in hand, the expression of someone who had waited years for karma to circle back around. "I've been keeping records," she said, handing me the folder like it was a family heirloom. When she left our neighborhood, she owed fines, lied about permits for a pool party, and once tried to rent the clubhouse to host what she called a celebrity fashion show that turned out to be 3 Instagram models and a box of knockoff purses. I flipped through the papers. There were screenshots, formal violation letters, and even an email thread where Karen tried to sue the HOA for emotional distress after they shut down her fireworks display on a Tuesday in March. "She threatened to burn the whole HOA down," Cheryl added, sipping her coffee. "We took it metaphorically at the time. Maybe we shouldn't have." I thanked her, took the folder, and added it to my growing archive. The pieces were coming together. Karen wasn't just entitled, she was a serial scammer who jumped from one neighborhood to another, spinning lies and using buzzwords like influencer, nonprofit, and community event to cloak her behavior in legitimacy. But the truth was, she operated in chaos. And she had finally crossed paths with someone who could match her energy, but with actual training and the law on his side. By the end of the week, the Fraud Task Force had officially opened a wider investigation into her past event. Her accounts were being monitored. The so-called Emerging Influencer Foundation was flagged for tax evasion and failure to file nonprofit status with the state. And just when I thought things couldn't possibly get any wilder, I got a call from a local journalist who had been following the case. "Hey, is this Jordan Marshall?" "Yes. I'm working on a piece called From Red Carpet to Handcuffs, The Downfall of a DIY Diva. Can I get a quote?" I laughed. "Sure. Use this. If you build your empire on someone else's driveway, don't be surprised when it gets towed." The article dropped 2 days later. It featured screenshots of Karen mid-scream, my surveillance footage showing her bribing an inspector, and a photo of her deflating the inflatable swan with one shoe off and smeared mascara. The story went viral, not just locally but across social media. People started digging into her past, finding old Yelp reviews, outdated websites, and one blog post from 2018 where she claimed to be the next Martha Stewart, but hotter and with more followers. The internet was brutal. Memes flooded in. Someone photoshopped her face onto a Monopoly board square called "Go Directly to Jail. Do Not Pass Gala, Do Not Collect Donations." She finally made a public statement through what I assume was a burner Instagram account, claiming she was the victim of a targeted harassment campaign by a rogue cop with a personal vendetta and a history of oppressive behavior. The comments section wasn't kind. Meanwhile, I used the sudden popularity of the story to do something productive. I partnered with a real local nonprofit that supported young entrepreneurs and helped them set up legitimate events, workshops, and community spaces. They reached out to thank me, and we ended up organizing a neighborhood fundraiser. This time with permits, real food trucks, and no glitter sashes. At the event, someone handed me a custom-made sign. A sturdy metal plaque with bold letters engraved across the top. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted," filmed, and possibly featured in a viral meme. I installed it right at the edge of my driveway. A warning, a monument, and a reminder. Karen had underestimated me. She saw a guy in sweats with a truck and assumed I was just some obstacle in the way of her next scam. What she got instead was a state trooper with a camera system, a legal team on speed dial, and an entire internet of people ready to watch her crash and burn. A month after the driveway debacle, the town felt quieter. Maybe it was the natural return to normal after the chaos, or maybe it was because Karen had gone completely radio silent since the article dropped. No tweets, no cryptic Instagram stories, not even a new fake charity website popping up in her name. Part of me wondered if she had finally learned a lesson. But another, far more realistic part, suspected she was somewhere regrouping, probably at a discount day spa, plotting how to spin her downfall into a redemption arc. Either way, I had moved on. Or tried to. The red carpet grooves in the gravel had finally faded, the event flyers were long gone, and the local bakery had even named a cupcake after the whole ordeal. It was vanilla with edible glitter and red fondant, called Karen's Gala Disaster. It sold out every Saturday. Life, surprisingly, had improved. My bosses at the state trooper's office were more than happy with how I handled the situation. In fact, they made a quiet example out of it: how to de-escalate, document, and respond professionally under insane circumstances. I got pulled into a few leadership panels, shared my experience at some trainings, and earned a fancy little plaque from the governor's office for community service and public engagement in the face of adversity. I didn't think a driveway party qualified as adversity, but hey, it looked good in my home office. Even more surprising was the outpouring of support from people in my town. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years dropped off thank you cards. Local business owners who dealt with Karen at some point of her shady ventures came forward to share stories and screenshots that helped build an even stronger case against her. The fraud unit called me once a week with updates. Every time they peeled back a layer of her past, they found more scams. Fake wedding planning services, a bogus online course for aspiring influencers, and one truly bizarre endeavor where she claimed she could teach pets how to go viral on social media. Spoiler, she couldn't. Eventually, the district attorney made their move. Karen was officially charged with multiple counts: trespassing, falsification of public records, theft of utilities, wire fraud, and filing a false police report. They added an additional charge for obstruction after she tried to shift blame onto her imaginary assistant, a woman named Tammy who, according to all evidence, had never existed. Karen tried to hire a defense attorney with the last of her stolen ticket funds, but that account was frozen weeks earlier. So she ended up with a court-appointed lawyer who, to their credit, looked more exhausted every time they stepped out of a hearing. The trial date was set, and I was called to testify. I showed up in full uniform, not because I had to, but because I knew it would bother her. When Karen walked into the courtroom, she was a ghost of the woman who had strutted across my driveway with a clipboard and a megaphone. She was dressed plainly, her hair pulled back tightly, her makeup minimal. The glitter had died. The delusion hadn't. When she saw me, she actually tried to wink. The prosecution laid it all out. The forged documents, the unlicensed event, the unauthorized use of private property and utilities. They played video after video, each one capturing her tantrums, threats, lies, and the moment she told a county official she had more followers than the mayor. Her defense tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she believed she had permission, that she was misled by this mysterious Derek, who once again failed to appear or exist. The judge wasn't buying it. When I took the stand, I kept it simple. I told the truth, just like I'd done from the beginning. That she showed up uninvited, refused to leave, and tried to spin a scam into a spectacle right on my property. I explained how I documented everything, involved the right departments, and handled it by the book. The judge seemed to appreciate the restraint, especially when Karen interrupted once to shout, "This is a personal vendetta." After a long week of testimony, the verdict came in: guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to community service, fined heavily, and placed on probation with restricted internet access. The judge even issued a unique order. Any attempt to organize events, either in person or online, would require city approval and a monitored escrow fund. Karen stormed out of the courtroom with what dignity she had left, which wasn't much. Her final words to the press were, "I'll rise again." This isn't the end. I watched her walk away and thought, no, it probably wasn't the end for her. But for me, it was closure. Back at home, I decided to commemorate the saga in my own way. I installed a new mailbox post at the entrance to my property. Beneath it, I placed a small but sturdy sign made from reclaimed wood and etched with precision. It read, "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted, filmed, and possibly featured on the evening news." The neighbors loved it. People took pictures. Someone even made a bumper sticker version that started showing up at local shops. Then, one sunny Saturday, I hosted my own event. Not a red carpet gala, not a pop-up scam, but a real community block party. The nonprofit I'd partnered with came out in full force. Local artists painted murals, small business owners set up booths, and kids danced around to music played by a local band. We had permits, we had parking, and we had food trucks that didn't need to steal electricity. The mayor stopped by, posed for pictures, and even bought one of the glitter cupcakes. He gave a short speech, laughing about how sometimes the wildest things make the best lessons. I stood off to the side, content, knowing that the property Karen had tried to use as a platform for her scam was now being used for something real. Something that gave back. Toward the end of the day, as the sun dipped low and the music faded, someone asked if I'd ever hear from her again. "I doubt it," I said. "But if I do, she's going to find a driveway she doesn't want to step foot on twice." It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was just balance. Karen had tried to hijack my space, my peace, and my authority, and in the end, she gave me something instead, a way to connect with my neighbors, to improve my town, and to turn a disaster into a story people would be telling for years. And yeah, maybe I got a cupcake named after me too. The State Trooper Special. Chocolate with a surprise caramel center and a tiny candy badge on top. Justice never tasted so sweet.